Douglas's eyes ease open. It's pitch black, the dead of night. He can't see a thing. He doesn't know how long it's been since his failed escape, only that it's been long enough that every remnant of that night's storm has gone. "Who's there?" he whispers back, questioning. The golden beam of a torch flicks over his face, and he squints in the sudden brightness. "It's us," his driver replies, suddenly visible in the gloom. His fireman appears beside him. "We're going to get you out of here," he whispers. Douglas's eyes widen. "Really? But what if we get caught again?" He feels his crew climbing into his cab and preparing a fire in his firebox. "We willna," they say. "It's the middle of the night. Nae a soul is stirring." Douglas sighs as he feels himself begin to warm up with the growing heat of his fire. "What time is it?" "It's just after 2 in the morning," his fireman answers. He thinks on this. It was hours earlier than last time, when it had only been just before dawn. There definitely wouldn't be anyone around at this time of night. Maybe they really did have a chance. Time passes and Douglas feels steam rushing into his cylinders. He is ready. His driver eases open the regulator and Douglas pulls forward, his moving parts creaking stiffly. The weather has been cold and drizzly ever since the failed escape, and, having sat immobile on a damp siding since that night, he wonders if he's already starting to rust. He cringes at the very thought. Even so, his crew guide him through the scrapyard, and he can just make out the looming shapes of old engines and rolling stock in the dark. They don't stop to turn on his lamps until they reach the junction for the main line, and the signalman must be in league with them because he simply tips his head and switches the points accordingly. They stop again at the first station and quickly fill his tender, which had been emptied by the scrappers upon his arrival in the scrapyard. Luckily his crew had brought just enough coal, and he had enough water left in his boiler to get them this far, before they were truly off. The problem does not come until hours later, as they cross over the Scottish-English border and pull into the first station they come to for a rest. "Damn it," Douglas's driver exclaims. Sodor's name marked on this map." "What?" his fireman replies. "What do you mean, Sodor's name marked?" He snatches the map out of the driver's hand to take a look. "Well, shite." They turn to Douglas. "I dinna suppose you know where Sodor is, do ye?" Douglas frowns. It's somewhere along the east coast, isn't it?" "I thought it was the west," says his driver. "The railway there is called the Northwestern." The fireman scratches the back of his head. "Are you sure it's nae the south?" The driver frowns. "I dinna ken why it would be," he sighs. "We'll just have to ask someone." So Douglas waits as his crew head inside the station building. He keeps a close eye on the lines and takes careful note of the whistles and horns he hears, worried someone from his old railway might come up and see him escaping. Several minutes later, his crew returns. They don't seem pleased. "I can't believe it," his driver exclaims. "That was absurd." "Sodor? What's a Sodor?" His fireman imitates a rather annoying voice. Douglas is a bit confused by this. "What happened?" he asks. His driver scoffs. "Guy pretended like Sodor doesn't exist. When we asked about the Northwestern Railway, he was all like, 'You mean the Great Western?'" "That's strange," says Douglas. I guess we should just keep going. Someone will lend us a buffer, surely. They do, though their luck does not improve. At the next station, they have to pull into a siding to allow another train to pass. There, they meet a grubby, overworked tank engine, busily shunting trucks and taking shit from a rather lazy '08 shunter. When the tank engine stops to take on water, he eyes Douglas suspiciously. Haven't seen you around here before. Nay, we're just passing through, Douglas starts nervously. Say, you dinna ken the way to the Isle of Sodor, do ye? The tank engine stares blankly. Sodor? Never heard of it, he says, though it's clear he's lying. Soon, Douglas is given the all clear, and he makes to head back out onto the line. As he does, the tank engine calls to him. You had better be careful. Driver told me there's an escaped scrap engine from the CR that might be fleeing south. We're supposed to report it if we see it. He said it's an 812. There was a pause. Wait a minute. Douglas takes off before the tank engine can finish. We're doomed, he thinks. A few days go by, and before they know it, they are officially lost. The weather remains cold and wet, and Douglas's crew put up a tarp between his cab roof and his tender in an attempt to stay dry. Coal hoppers are becoming few and far between. The big stations still have them, but many of the smaller ones have already had theirs removed. This becomes a problem, as Douglas and his crew need to avoid the big stations in order to stay under the radar. It's almost a week later when they pull up to a coal hopper at an average-sized station near, well, somewhere. There's a large, tired-looking tender engine waiting to depart with a goods train, and he watches them out of the corner of his eye. Are you an 812? He asks eventually. Douglas looks away nervously, anxious to leave. You're the runaway, aren't you? The Caledonian scrap engine they've been on about? The Caledonian scrap engine they've been on about? He continues. Look, I won't turn you in. If they ask, you were never here, but you can't run forever. There's a pause as coal clatters into Douglas's tender before the Scottish engine replies. I didn't suppose you ken the way to Sodor, do ye? The bigger engine scoffs. Sodor? That's what you're looking for? It's nothing more than a ridiculous myth, a story little engines tell themselves to sleep at night. Douglas lets off steam crossly. That's nae true. My brother went to Sodor. He's there right now. Douglas wheeshes him crossly and pulls away. Hud your wheesh, you wee Sassenach. That went well, said Douglas's fireman once they're cruising on down the line again. Douglas is growing worried. What if Sodor really doesn't exist? What if we're just chasing a ghost? It has to exist. Where is Donald if it doesn't?